So Alessandro de Medici, he was actually, according to you, one of the head of state in modern Western Europe, and his story is
Yeah,
unknown. Why?
I call him the first head of state in modern Western Europe. Because obviously, as you said earlier, in the Roman Empire, we had Afro descendants head of state. That might
Absolutely.
be a next movie, you know.
It's true that, of course, we don't say these things, no, even when it comes to Pope, because when Cardinal Arize was nominated to be the first, I'm sorry, I'm just breaking out too many issues, no, to nominated to possibly become the first, it was said to be the first black Pope. Everybody, of course, was already shouting in the Western world, particularly, how can, but actually, it's not the first time we're having the first black Pope. But the question is, are we actually knowing the story? So that is why people like you are very vital. No? People who had the courage to challenge the mainstream and sort of tell a different version of the story, not just his version of the story, but also your version of the story. So the question I'm going to let it linger for some time. Why was the story of Alexander de Medici not even told? Why?
Well, that's such a complicated question. Obviously, the first answer I'm going to give you is I don't have the answer because I wasn't there. But the second answer I'm going to give you is when, in the 1700s, 1800s, when racism became what we know it to be today, because the slave trade started, and we know what that brought to. There was a push from scientists and men of letters to justify what Europe was doing. And to justify it, what did they do? They changed history. Or better again, they decided to tell a story that would validate their actions. And so here we have the first accounts of how Africans were a lower race. And so what Europeans were doing was fair. And they were bringing civilization. I think that literally when I hear that Europeans were bringing civilization to Africa, it's literally like nails on a chalkboard. So back then, a lot of what came from Africa started being either whitewashed or demonized. And I think that that might be part of the why the story of Alessandro de Medici wasn't mainstream. Another part of this story is probably that that part of the Medici history, I guess we could say was weaker. Alessandro Ippolito, his contemporaries, they found themselves between two very big moments of the Medici history. So that moment kind of falls flat a little bit. And that might be another reason. But I think, there probably are, there's more than one reason. That's what I want to say.
Thank you very much, Daphne. Now, there are some people who don't even know what we are talking about here about Alexander de Medici. Can you give us a little background of this personality? Who is him?
So, Alessandro de Medici, we know him as the first Duke of Florence. He's a member of the Medici family, but it wasn't always so. He was born illegitimate from a woman of African descent who was a slave in the Medici household. Alessandro gets legitimized from the Medici when he is older, not as a toddler, when he's probably around I guess between 7 and 10, something like that. And the reason being is that the Medici found themselves lacking Medici heirs of the main line of the family. And all of a sudden, well, everybody dies, basically. So the Pope Clement VII, who today is seen as Alessandro's legitimate dad. Let me backtrack a little bit. For the longest time, Alessandro de Medici was said to be the son of Lorenzo de Medici, the Duke of Urbino. Today, some research shows that he more probably was the son of Clement VII, who his lay name was Giulio de Medici, so he was a Medici too. What's really interesting about this story is that Giulio de Medici, Pope Clement VII, was an illegitimate child too. So he ended up being legitimized afterwards as well. Okay, moving forward then, we find ourselves at a place where the Medici don't have a legitimate heir anymore. Pope Clement VII is the head of the family, really, and he has to ensure that the main line of the family goes on. And so now we have two illegitimate children. One is Ippolito de Medici, who as well wasn't born, in wedlock, and the other one is Alessandro. Obviously, this is the 1500s. People die very easily. And number two is families like the Medici, they needed more than one heir. One would have taken, the political power, but they wanted to ensure that some of the power was also in the religious sphere. That's why they needed more than one heir to kind of make sure that their power would just be encompassing. What happens is that because of a series of events, Ippolito de Medici, who was designated to become Lord of Florence, is actually made cardinal. So at a certain point, after a few, difficult events comprising the sack of Rome, Pope Clement VII does un accordo. What's the word for accordo?
A kind of agreement, yeah.
Yeah,
Agreement, yeah.
Deal. We would call it a deal today with
yeah.
with Carlo V, so the King of Spain, and he gives Florence back to the Medici as a dukedom, and Clemente VII decides that Alessandro will be the duke, and so that's how Alessandro de Medici becomes the first Duke of Florence.
Thank you very much for that. That is very important for most of us that are hearing of the background of this story for the first time. We really appreciate that. That is really highly valuable. Now, do we know anything that we can trace to him as his personal achievement as a Duke of Florence? In the time that he was the head, yeah.
Right. Well, his dukedom was very short, unfortunately, because he ends murdered. And as far as achievements go, actually, what I'm thinking of now is the way he came into the city. He became the duke in the 1530, but he only comes into the city later because Florence was under revolt at the time, and Pope Clement VII wanted to ensure that the dukedom would start with a clean slate. So he actually sends Alessandro away with Charles V while he cleans up Florence, so that when Alessandro comes in, he wouldn't really get the blame of being the person that, killed off the people who initiated the revolt. Alessandro comes in, and I'm imagining this young boy, suddenly the Duke, it must have been really scary, especially knowing that a lot of people didn't want him there. So one of the first things he does, which also earns him a reputation, the reputation that he's known for afterwards of a tyrant, is that he comes back to Florence, and in Palazzo Vecchio, there's a bell, and this bell is used to call the people to the piazza in case of revolt, for example. He takes this bell, destroys it, and makes coins out of the gold with his face on it. So the guy came in, making a statement.